Let's jump right in. For decades, engine cooling relied on a simple, passive lump of wax. It reacts to temperature after the fact. It expands when it finally gets hot enough, pushes open a valve, and eventually cools things down. Now, that might be perfectly fine for your passenger car, but today, we're looking at the massive Caterpillar C175 engine. And let me tell you, we are completely ditching that outdated mechanical cooling. Instead, we're going to explore how this beast uses precision electronic temperature control and why an engine this size absolutely demands a system that thinks ahead instead of just reacting. Let's see how the electronic thermostat actually earns its name. Consider the sheer difference in scale here. On one hand, you have that reactive, imprecise chunk of wax. But that simplicity simply cannot handle the massive thermal stress of an 85-liter ductile iron block. When we're talking about ductile iron at this massive scale, it's just pure physics. Metal expands when it heats up and contracts when it cools. If your cooling system is imprecise, letting the temperature swing wildly up and down, that huge block is constantly expanding and contracting. Over thousands of hours, that constant movement creates severe fatigue. When you're dealing with industrial standby power, you literally cannot afford to wait for a piece of wax to slowly react to a crisis. You need a system that actively, precisely manages the heat. So we are replacing that passive wax entirely with the E-stat, or electronic thermostat. This system uses a thermostat control module, or TCM, stepper motor. What makes this a total game changer is that it actually anticipates what the engine needs. Instead of just reacting after the coolant is already getting dangerously hot, the E-stat proactively regulates the coolant bypass. It keeps temperatures inside an incredibly tight, stable window. It essentially pulls engine cooling out of the mechanical age and turns it into a high-speed digital operation. Here's the absolute crucial point. This TCM stepper motor gives you 0 to 100% continuous bypass control. But the real why it exists is to eliminate thermal cycling stress. By making constant, exact adjustments, this motor minimizes those repeated heating and cooling swings. It's that constant expansion and contraction over time that leads to microscopic fissures, long-term block warping, and blown head gaskets on these heavy-duty engines. The E-stat stops that fatigue before it even has a chance to start by keeping that block in perfect thermal equilibrium. In the real world, the engine control module, the ECM, is the absolute brain of the operation. It's constantly analyzing engine load, fuel delivery, and ambient conditions. Before the engine even heats up from a sudden spike in load, the ECM is already sending targeted signals over the CAN J1939 data link directly to that stepper motor. It's a continuous, high-speed conversation between the computer and the cooling system. The motor reacts in milliseconds, opening or closing the bypass valve in tiny, precise increments based on hard data, not just waiting for hot water to wash over it. Understanding this electronic control completely changes how we view the coolant flow itself. It really comes down to manipulating two extremes and everything in between. At 0% bypass, you get maximum cooling flow pushed straight through the heat exchanger. The engine's working hard and it's dumping heat as fast as possible. On the flip side, at 100% bypass, you're in warm-up mode. The system actively routes coolant away from the cooling circuit entirely. This makes sure that massive 85-liter block comes up to its optimal operating temperature much faster, slashing cold running wear and tear right from startup. Let's actually look at the hardware. Notice the piston inside the thermostat housing. This isn't just a simple open or closed gate like an old flapper valve. Because it's driven by a stepper motor, it can physically move this piston to hold absolutely any position. Whether that's 0%, exactly 50%, 82%, or 100%, it does it with incredible precision, and it never drifts. That exact positioning is driven entirely by real-time engine load and environmental conditions that the ECM is monitoring continuously. I love this analogy. Think of it this way. A traditional wax thermostat is like an old oven's imprecise low, medium, high dial. It gets you in the general neighborhood of the temperature you want. Eventually, it overshoots, it undershoots, and you just kind of accept it. The TCM, on the other hand, is a modern precision sous vide cooker. It holds an exact specific temperature to the decimal point for hours without drifting a single degree. That exact level of proactive, continuous fine-tuning is exactly what an 85-liter engine under shifting loads demands to stay structurally sound. Now, here is where we need to challenge your instincts as a technician or operator. Let's say you're looking at your monitoring software and you see wild, erratic temperature swings on a C175. What's your very first move? Do you grab your wrenches, drain the coolant, and immediately rip out the thermostat, assuming it's mechanically stuck, just like you would on literally any older mechanical diesel engine? If you said yes, hold your horses, because the E-stat is an electronic instrument. You absolutely must check the wiring harness first. A disconnected sensor resulting in an FMIO3 open circuit, or a signal wire shorting out to the block causing an FMIO4 low voltage code, will cause erratic temperatures. The ECM loses communication and the stepper motor stops getting commands. On your monitor, an electrical short or a frayed wire looks exactly like a mechanically stuck valve. You have to verify ECM communication and rule out those electrical faults before you even think about turning wrenches on a perfectly good stepper motor.
But that naturally brings up a really important what-if scenario. What happens if the TCM suffers a total electrical failure? Say a wiring harness gets completely severed in the field and you have zero communication. Are you just left with a completely uncontrolled cooling system waiting for the engine to overheat and force a catastrophic shutdown? No way. The engineers thought of that for sure. You can actually manually override the valve. You just locate the Allen head fitting right there on the stepper motor cover, insert an Allen wrench, and physically rotate the shaft yourself to dial in the exact cooling flow you need. By doing this, you act as an emergency containment method to prevent the engine from overheating until proper electrical repairs can be made. It's a brilliant failsafe, making sure you are never fully locked out of your cooling system, even if the computers go totally dark. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to really think about this. If your cooling system is no longer a reactive lump of wax, but a precision electronic instrument communicating on a high-speed data link, what other mechanical troubleshooting habits do you need to break? This shift from reactive mechanics to proactive electronics completely changes how you approach every single component on the C175 platform. It requires a fundamentally modern, digital diagnostic mindset. Keep that proactive mindset ready, trust the electronics, and thanks for joining me for this explainer.